In 2007, an American cable channel called Adult Swim began airing a Japanese animated series called Death Note. The show ran on Saturday nights in a programming block aimed at adult viewers. Within months, Death Note had become one of the most discussed anime in Western media. By the end of its initial broadcast run, it had a following that significantly exceeded anything that had previously crossed from anime into mainstream Western adult viewership. Death Note is, in the standard history of anime in the West, the show that converted millions of viewers from people who did not watch anime into people who watched anime. The show worked as a gateway in a way that almost no other anime had before it. Understanding why it worked requires understanding what most anime had been doing wrong, from the perspective of an audience that had been trained on Western prestige drama. Most anime that reached Western audiences before 2007 had been aimed at children or at young teenagers. Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, Sailor Moon, Yu-Gi-Oh! These shows were excellent in their own categories, but they were structurally identified as children's content. An adult Western viewer encountering anime through these shows would generally conclude that anime was a children's medium. The conclusion was wrong, but the available evidence supported it. Death Note was, from its first episode, identifiable as adult content. The premise involved a high school student who discovers a supernatural notebook that allows him to kill anyone whose name he writes in it. The story that follows is, in genre terms, a psychological thriller. The main character is a self-styled vigilante who decides to use the notebook to eliminate criminals. The opposing character is a detective tasked with stopping him. The two characters spend the show outmaneuvering each other in escalating intellectual confrontations. The structural features that made Death Note legible to adult Western audiences are worth examining individually. The first feature was the tone. Death Note maintained a serious, often grim tone from its first episode through its end. There were almost no comedic moments. There were no chibi cutaways. The fan service was minimal and contextual. An adult viewer turning on the show for the first time would not be told, through any of the standard anime conventions, that they were watching a children's product. The second feature was the structure. Death Note ran for 37 episodes, divided into clear story arcs that built towards specific resolutions. The pacing was tight by anime standards and tight even by Western prestige drama standards. Plot threads were established, developed, and resolved within reasonable time frames. Characters made decisions that had consequences that played out across multiple episodes. The third feature was the genre. Death Note was a psychological thriller, which is a genre that has direct equivalents in Western television and film. Viewers who had watched shows like The Wire or films like Sesfin had a vocabulary for understanding what Death Note was trying to do. The genre framing made the show legible in a way that less directly comparable anime were not. The fourth feature was the production quality. The animation was, by Japanese television standards of the era, exceptional. The character designs were detailed. The action sequences, when they occurred, were carefully choreographed. The music was a serious orchestral score. The voice acting in both Japanese and English was performed by professional actors who took the material seriously. The fifth feature, which is harder to measure but probably most important, was the marketing. Adult Swim was, by 2007, the dominant American cable destination for adult-oriented animation. The block had built its audience around shows like Family Guy, The Boondocks, and Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Adult Swim viewers were specifically the audience that watched animation and treated it as adult media. When Adult Swim added Death Note to its lineup, the show was placed in front of an audience that was already conditioned to take animation seriously. This combination of features produced an unusual outcome. Death Note attracted viewers who had never watched anime before and would not have watched any other anime that was available at the time. The viewers were specifically the adult prestige drama audience that anime had previously failed to reach. Once these viewers had watched Death Note, many of them began exploring other anime. Some discovered that the medium had a vast catalog of adult-oriented work. Some discovered specific subgenres that matched their interests. Some became long-term anime fans who continued watching the medium for decades. The downstream consequences are visible in the audience demographics for every major anime release of the past 15 years. The adult Western anime audience that supports Attack on Titan, Demon Slayer, and Chainsaw Man today includes a substantial cohort whose entry point was Death Note in 2007 and 2008. The infrastructure that streaming platforms like Crunchyroll and Netflix built to serve this audience exists partly because Death Note created the audience. There is a structural lesson buried in this story that applies beyond anime. The conventional way to introduce a new audience to a foreign category is to translate the category into the new audience's existing reference points. Anime that tried to reach Western adult audiences before Death Note often did this by softening the foreign elements. They reduced cultural specificity. They added comedic moments. They simplified the tone. The result was that the products lost what was distinctive about them in the process of trying to be accessible. Death Note did the opposite. The show was, in many ways, more aggressively foreign than other anime. The cultural specificity was preserved. The tone was uncompromisingly serious. The story trusted the audience to follow complex moral and intellectual arguments. The show did not try to soften itself. This worked because the audience that Death Note was actually reaching was not the audience that wanted softened content. The Adult Swim audience was specifically the audience that wanted animation, that took itself seriously. The foreign elements that other anime had been removing were, for this audience, features rather than obstacles. The Japanese setting, the unfamiliar narrative conventions, the genre experimentation. All of these things were what the Adult Swim audience was looking for and not finding in American animation. The lesson generalizes. When you are introducing a foreign cultural product to a new market, identify the audience in the new market that is specifically dissatisfied with what the new market already offers them. That audience will often be receptive to the foreign product precisely because it offers what the local market does not. Softening the foreign product to appeal to the broader market will lose that receptive audience and rarely capture the broader market. The receptive audience is small but reliable. The broader market is usually not actually addressable. Death Note found its audience because the show did not try to be a more accessible version of something the audience already had. It tried to be something the audience could not get from anything else. The strategy worked. It continues to work 16 years later for the audience that found anime through Death Note and stayed. If you found this interesting, subscribe. We go deep on the structural reasons certain cultural products serve as gateways into entire categories. Drop your requests in the comments. Thanks for watching.